All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Dank NASCAR download. It is your boy G4 Stemp at Dank NASCAR Memes. We're here for episode 7. Last episode was a very exciting one. We had Christian Eckes on the podcast in episode 6. Episode 7 just wanted to do a little talking by myself, so if you guys don't like me talking, then you could leave. But hey, if you want to hear some interesting thoughts about the next-gen car in the first couple races of the season, I'd suggest staying. I got to talk about the Clash, the Daytona 500, we got Auto Club, Vegas, and just overall impressions of the year so far. So, alright, how about we get started? Oh, and also, I just forgot, I just posted on my Instagram story, I got a couple questions. Put a small Q&A. I'm going to be selecting 3 random questions. They have like Ask Junior on the Dale Jr. download. Maybe do a like rip off Ask Stemp on the Dank NASCAR download. I don't know, but we got 3 questions we're gonna ask that we're gonna answer rather. So we'll get to that towards the end of the episode. But for now, let's just start off with talking about the next gen car. That's the biggest storyline I think entering the 2022 season. I think more than anything else, really. The next gen car, this has been in the works since 2019, I believe. People had a lot of questions about it, about the safety, about the racing of it, about the horsepower, about the speeds of it. The speeds are a bit concerning. That's the only concern and complaint I have with the next gen car. The speeds are very low. But besides that, I think we have a very, very good racing package on our hands. The Daytona 500, besides the single car and about like the whole like popping out of the draft, getting stuck out of the draft when somebody like abandons you. We'll talk about that later when I will talk about the Clash. So we'll talk about how you can lose the draft very easily at super speedways, but super speedway racing, very good. We did a short track at the Coliseum, very good, except for like that part where 3 mechanical issues had Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick broke their transaxles. Chase Briscoe broke his transmission, but again, that's because he was shifting. But yeah, we also got Auto Club, Las Vegas, 2 cookie cutters, which I think we have seen the best racing we have seen since probably, I'd say, maybe the 2014 package at Auto Club in Las Vegas. I mean, we've seen better racing than we have before. Auto Club, you saw a bunch of different leaders and stuff. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But first on, let's talk about the Clash at the LA Coliseum. A lot of people were skeptic about it, I'm not gonna lie. When you look at like, oh, we're gonna have a Clash inside the LA Coliseum, I'm like, holy moly, this is gonna be insane. It's gonna be incredible. I mean, you got Ice Cube doing a halftime concert, Pitbull pre-race concert. You're gonna have heat races and stuff like classical short track racing around like local tracks, and that type of format. I was wondering how on earth they're gonna build a track inside the LA Coliseum, but hey, they managed to do it. But a lot of people were skeptic about it being in a bad part of LA and like, oh, we're gonna be a bunch of homeless people there. But I think NASCAR put on a great show. It was a massive success for NASCAR. Probably, in my opinion, the best experiment, the best success in the experiment they have done in years. I mean, this was a hit. They got a ton of new people into NASCAR. It was very good. They got a bunch of money out of it. It took about like $1 million to build the track, which is, for a track, I mean, you already have the stands built, which is already like a huge part of the budget. And all you need to do is put down some dirt, put down some asphalt, put up some fences and all that. It took $1 million to build, which is pretty cheap when you're looking at a NASCAR track. But when you look at like all the revenue they got out of it, off of tickets, the sales, the merch, they got several $1 million out of it. So this was, I mean, just like in terms of like monetary stuff, financially, this was a huge success for NASCAR. I mean, in terms of the fan base, the seats were very crowded with a lot of fans, old and new. You saw many fans of different diverse backgrounds. I mean, you got to see a lot of Hispanic fans, African-American fans. You saw a bunch of ladies down there. I mean, you don't see a bunch of ladies at regular NASCAR races anyways. And you see, like, classic NASCAR fans wearing their old Dale Jr. shirts, Chase Elliott stuff, Jeff Gordon, and all the older old retro shirts. Maybe they just wanted to look retro because that's, like, in style in, like, the pop culture stuff in LA now. People always like ask me when I wear like a NASCAR stuff, like, yo, that's so retro. I'm like, no, I'm just a NASCAR fan. This isn't style or anything. But yeah, many people at the race. I saw a poll by like, I think it was Jeff Gluck or something, that I think it was like in the 60s of 60% of people said that it was their first time attending a NASCAR race, and the place was pretty close to selling out. I mean, the stands, besides like the what's it called, like the concrete steps at the like main part of the Coliseum in front of like where Ice Cube and Pitbull were performing, those weren't really occupied. But like the red part of the stands, like where the USC fans all sit, those, you could see a lot of fans there. There were a lot of fans, and knowing that a lot of people were new fans, it was their first time at a NASCAR race. That's huge for NASCAR. That's what they're trying to do in today's age. I mean, you see them trying to like promote diversity and all that to try to welcome in a new modern crowd. As you know, as you see a lot of old rednecks like NASCAR, they're trying to move away from that stereotype. And I think you got to see a lot of that in NASCAR. You also had a lot of celebrities there. You got pop stars performing. It was really damn cool to see Pitbull and Ice Cube performing live there. I mean, if I wasn't a fan, even if I wasn't a NASCAR fan, I probably would have paid the NASCAR ticket prices, because NASCAR tickets are like dirt cheap. And just to hear two concerts from Pitbull and Ice Cube, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, Pitt is a massive, he's like a worldwide best-selling artist. He has like I'm pretty sure like a couple #1 albums, bunch of #1 international songs and stuff. He owns a NASCAR team as well. And then you got Ice Cube, like a living legend. I mean, stuff like I wouldn't say I grew up on, since like when I was younger, I don't really listen to that. I started listening to that more than I was like 14, 15 and all that, like classic rap. Like I'm talking like Snoop Dogg, classic Dr. Dre, old Kanye, old Eminem, like 1990s Eminem, Ice Cube, maybe a little bit of, I don't know, whatever. Let's not talk about my music taste for now, and let's get back to racing. So having Ice Cube there and Pitbull and DJ Ski, whatever, I had no idea who that was, but apparently he's like a really popular DJ. I'm not into that like whole EDM stuff, so I wouldn't know him. But having those guys there and having concerts in a race, it's unheard of. I mean, they had it like in the middle of cautions at Texas last year, but like listening to them perform while the cars were on track, I mean, I can't really imagine that. But now that you have a break, because you have like a normal style like local short track race where you have like breaks to change tires once a race, I mean, they made a show out of it. They made a show, and it was a huge success. You saw people dancing and stuff, people having fun. I mean, Fox muted them because a lot of Ice Cube songs had the N-word, and obviously you don't want to hear people singing along in the background. I mean, NBC learned a lot about the whole fans in the background when they had the Let's Go brand, the whole Let's Go Brandon thing at Talladega last fall. So I think a bunch of networks are, just Fox and NBC are learning to maybe do a little bit of crowd control in terms of audio and all that. So yeah, it sounded pretty empty, but from what I heard, people were jamming out. Like I have a friend, I know somebody I know on Instagram, California Diecast. You guys should go give him a follow. He's a nice guy and all that. Really good NASCAR content. Get to talk with him a lot. He's a good guy. So go hit him up with a follow. He was at the Coliseum race. He said the atmosphere there, even during the concerts, during the race, it was incredible. So atmosphere, music there, the fans, pretty good. But we did see a bit of a problem with the cars, though, with multiple drivers breaking their transaxle for no apparent reason. Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, no damage or anything. The car just broke. Chase Briscoe, you could argue, was shifting too much, maybe broke the drive shaft by doing that. But the other two were just the car breaking, so maybe teams might need to watch out for that at Martinsville later this year, which is basically, LA Coliseum was like kind of like a smaller version of Martinsville, so like tracks with long straightaways, tight corners, you might want to watch out for that next year. Not next year, later this year. But overall, really good show. Race was packed with action, a lot of passing, which I didn't expect. I expected them to be very hard to pass, but we actually saw a lot of it. We saw a bunch of wrecks, which I did expect. You had a great atmosphere, as I mentioned before. The fan interaction there was credible. I know the California Diecast who told me he met like 30 drivers there, like in the pit area. He had pit passes. They meet like 30 drivers. That's crazy. And all in all, I think it was a great move by NASCAR to put it there. I mean, the Boomers didn't want it to succeed, but it definitely did. Great success. So we're already at 9 minutes in the episode, which I didn't expect to take that long. So let's move on to Daytona. Daytona, obviously, biggest race of the year. You have a lot of attention on that. People thought that the next-gen car would provide a different qualifying, maybe break Hendrick and Chevrolet's, 2 million year streak of Daytona 500 poles, but we thought wrong. I mean, honestly, I think it's kind of, a bit weird how, literally nobody has been able to beat them since 2015. I mean, even before 2012, where Carl Edwards broke the Chevy streak, I mean, you had Chevys winning it 4 straight years before that, 3 of them being Hendrick Motorsports drivers. You got Jimmy Johnson 2008, Martin Truex driving for DEI / Ganassi in a Chevy. Then you got Hendrick drivers Mark Martin and Dale Jr. in 2010 and 2011. Carl Edwards obviously breaks it up in 2012, but in the next 10 years after that, we have yet to see a non-Chevy driver win it. 2013 and 14, you got Chevys winning it, Danica Patrick and Austin Dillon. Then you got 5 straight Hendrick drivers winning it, Jeff Gordon, Chase Elliott back-to-back, then William Byron. Next year, 2020, you have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for JTG, whose super speedway engine was coming from Hendrick Motorsports. JTG bought their engine from Hendrick. So that's the 6th straight year a Hendrick-powered car was on pole. Then you got Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson in 2021, 2022, marking 10 straight years a Chevy has sat on the pole, which is it's absurd. And 14 out of the last 15 years a Chevy has won a pole. I just find it like crazy how every single year Hendrick car sits on the pole and is the fastest car, but they haven't won a Daytona 500 ever since starting that pole position streak in 2015. Their last Daytona 500 win was with Dale Jr. 2014. All right, so yeah. Moving on from the Hendrick phenomenon, let's talk about how the next-gen car raced in the duels. We saw decent side-by-side racing with 2-3 wide, but what we did learn from these cars is that once you get shuffled out and you have no help, you're screwed. You get sent to the back of the pack, and we saw that even when drivers tried tucking back into the draft after they got shuffled out, they still lost it. It was hard to get it back. I find it on one hand kind of annoying that we had so many drivers lose the draft and lose touch of the front pack during the race, but on the other hand, it keeps things competitive because nobody wants to get shuffled out, because if you do, your race is pretty much over unless there's a caution or something to bunch you up. For the duels, Duel 1 was pretty boring, honestly, except for those last few laps where we saw Brad Keselowski take the lead in the final laps and get RFK Racing to victory lane for the first time. It was Brad's first duel win as well. We saw Chris Buescher do it too in a late move on Joey Logano in Duel 2, which completed an RFK sweep, something I don't think any of us saw coming. Other stories we saw, maybe a prelude to the 500, was in the last lap of Duel 1, where we saw 2 Penske cars, Blaney and Cindric, line up behind Keselowski on the backstretch with a run. I know I expected them to tandem behind the 6 car and go to the lead, but instead, Cindric made a move on Blaney, who was second at the time, and ended any shot they had at winning. As Kyle Busch once said, roll the clip.
I just don't understand how people can be so stupid. If you push me to go catch the dumb son of a, you have a shot to win. If you pass me, you eliminate your entire shot to win. You can't be that stupid.
So in the wise words of Kyle Busch, you don't get to hear that very often, you can't be that stupid. Austin Cindric, instead of pushing his teammate and tandeming for the win, they basically just let Keselowski run away with it. This is just the first example of us seeing Austin Cindric not working with his teammates. We'll talk about the Daytona 500 finish later. Anyways, we're caught up with another episode of drama at Team Penske in Duel 2, with Joey Logano making a dumb block at a plate track. Surprise, surprise. I personally find it funny how Joey is always the one complaining about the car's safety, despite the fact that it's always him or his teammates making the stupid blocks that cause wrecks and forcing NASCAR sand to make the cars slower for Daytona and Talladega. No matter how fast or how slow you make the cars, you're still going to have dumbasses making stupid blocks like Logano did, and it causes wrecks. If you want to whine about safety, maybe you should calm the hell down at plate tracks and stop causing a wreck almost every single year. Yeah, anyways, let's not talk about Logano and his blocking. Let's talk about the big show, the great American race, the Daytona 500. Racing was a bit during the first half of the race. We saw a lot of single file, not a lot of excitement or lead changes. Second half of the race, we saw things start to pick up. More lead changes, more moves being made. Seeing the lines move, it was decent racing. Obviously, you have the wrecks. Besides the mostly boring first half of the race, you got Brad Keselowski first causing that thing with Harrison Burton, pushing him a bit too hard. We saw Brad Keselowski cause 3 separate crashes by pushing too hard and turning people sideways. Harrison Burton flipping and causing many good cars to wreck out. You got Alex Bowman, Denny Hamlin. Alex Bowman was a front row driver. Denny Hamlin, 3-time Daytona 500 winner, going for 4. You get a lot of good drivers out of the race. Ross Chastain had damage. Burton obviously is out after what seemed to be a good start after he kind of flipped. So Brad was being just very aggressive with his pushing and shoving throughout the race, maybe just trying to be a bit overzealous, trying to capitalize on super speedways with his new team before they maybe hit struggles on the cookie cutters. I mean, you saw like how teams like 2311 Racing, Trackhouse Racing last year, they had to do good on super speedways because on the other tracks they were not good. They were still like having growing pains and stuff. I think RFK Racing, especially Brad Keselowski, he's used to being at Team Penske, who can constantly contend up front at mile-and-a-half tracks. Roush, not as much. So maybe Brad's just trying to capitalize on super speedways, get a win while you can, as I'd put it. Hey, we saw that those RFK cars were strong in the duels. Maybe Brad just tried to push too hard and try to get a win while he can. If there's one thing we learned from the duels and from the Daytona 500 in terms of the 6 car, you could take the Brad Keselowski out of Penske, but you can't take the Penske out of Brad Keselowski. Anyways, back to that exciting second half of the race. Towards the end of stage 3, around like the final 30 laps or so, I'd say, we had really good racing. It wasn't a lot of single file, mostly clean 2-wide racing. I mean, obviously towards the end you have Austin Cindric out front, defending the field. Like I mentioned previously, you have a bit of conflict with teammates Ryan Blaney. Blaney takes a big run to the outside towards the end of the race. Cindric just puts him in the wall. And I mean, that's not exactly something you want to do to your teammate, especially as a rookie in your first race as a full-time driver. I mean, people say, oh, Blaney shouldn't be so mad about it because, I mean, he did do the same thing to Eric Jones at Talladega in 2020. But again, this was a teammate.
Oh, teammates!
Yeah, as we can see from that clip right there, Team Penske doesn't exactly have a good history of teammates helping each other in the last lap of the Daytona 500, or at least not in the last 2 years. I mean, last year you got Keselowski and Logano wrecking each other on the last lap. I mean, you did have a bit of help from Michael McDowell. Now you see Blaney and Cindric wrecking each other on the last lap. That's 4 different drivers in 2 years. Ryan Blaney, in my opinion, has every right to be pissed off at Austin Cindric. I mean, not saying that what he did in 2020 to Eric Jones was right. It is somewhat hypocritical, but again, this is the Super Bowl of NASCAR. I mean, not only did he get wrecked on the final lap, but it was at the hands of somebody from his own stable. I mean, keep in mind, Ryan Blaney is also no stranger to heartbreak in the Daytona 500. He ran second to Kurt Busch in 2017, got in a wreck while leading in 2018, lost in 2020 in the second closest finish in Daytona 500 history, and now this. I mean, coming that close to a win in the biggest race and coming up short by just that small of a margin might hurt. It might hurt even more than just wrecking out completely. I mean, it hurts to be that close to win. I mean, speaking of being that close, we also had a photo finish at the line. Austin Cindric beat Bubba Wallace by just 0.036 seconds, the 4th closest finish in Daytona 500 history. It's crazy to think that Bubba Wallace was half a car length away from winning the Daytona 500. I mean, Jesus, can you imagine the immediate attention NASCAR would get from that? I mean, also imagine how many boomers would have lost their minds. Jesus Christ, it would have been hilarious. But, I mean, just like Ryan Blaney, this is Bubba Wallace's second time being a runner-up in the Daytona 500. I mean, and he was close this time. I mean, coming this close to a win on the biggest stage in NASCAR, it hurts. I mean, I like usually listening to Bubba Wallace or Kyle Busch's radios during the race. I was listening to the 23 team radio on that last lap, and here's what I got.
Wrecking up top, keep coming bottom, 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 hard, bottom hard, bottom hard, bottom hard. Keep coming, keep coming. Ah, good job, P2. Damn, way to go, man. That's close. Way to go, boy. Oh, damn, that's so good, man. So close. Great job.
So, as you heard, I mean, you could hear the spotter talking about the wreck and stuff, and after you hear P2, you hear Bubba Wallace drop 2 F-bombs. He was pretty clearly pissed off. Yeah, second place is great and all, but from a driver's perspective, it's the worst way to finish, being that close and not being able to win. I mean, I once heard a quote, second is the first loser, which personally I don't like, but that's what drivers think of. That's a driver's mentality. So, I mean, it definitely hurts to be so close, especially on the biggest stage in the Daytona 500. I mean, and just something that somebody pointed out to me for a second, there was a question that people were pointing out that I, as a fan of Bubba Wallace, he's my second favorite driver, I didn't even notice. Coming to the checkered after forcing Blaney into the outside wall, I mean, Cindric came down to block the 23 and forced him 2 tires below the yellow line, which apparently constitutes the yellow line rule. I mean, I'd originally thought it was all 4 tires. That's why I didn't think anything of it. But somebody showed me that it was 2 tires, and now I was thinking to myself, I'm like, no way they're going to end the Daytona 500 by penalizing Austin Cindric like that. And I was also thinking, like, oh my god, if they do that, it will be a PR disaster, and fans will be outraged. I mean, there's no way NASCAR could possibly do that and just end the Daytona 500 on that note. I mean, after looking at the replay, I realized even further that it probably wouldn't have made a difference. Even if Cindric hadn't made contact with him and knocked him below the yellow, Bubba maybe would have gotten to his front bumper, but there was no way he would have passed him. I mean, I'm sure NASCAR did review the footage, and even as a Bubba fan, I'm glad they didn't call that, because that would have been stupid. I'm saying that as a Bubba Wallace fan. That would have been stupid to call that. I mean, it's the Daytona 500. You can't DQ the winner unless they really, really badly messed up. Like, if they very clearly force somebody below the yellow line and, like, wreck them into the grass, I mean, then maybe. I mean, even if it would have been the most blatant block, below the yellow line of all time, NASCAR would have been in deep waters if they did it, because the boomers would cry and probably say they rigged it for Bubba Wallace. But, I mean, this was not going to be called. I pretty much knew it. But there was a bit of a wait a second moment for some people. But, yeah, a very controversial ending to the Daytona 500. But, look, Austin Cindric protected. He led late in the race. He protected well. So, kudos to him. Big for the number 2 car to finally get into victory lane in the Daytona 500 as soon as Brad Keselowski leaves it. But, yeah, good for Austin Cindric, man. I mean, he won the Daytona 500 and Daytona race in Xfinity last year. That's not the 500, but you know what I mean. Yes, so it's a big win for him. That's a great way to start off your NASCAR career and your rookie season at Team Penske. That's a way to make an impression. All right, so after Daytona, after all the shenanigans there, I mean, you have the first real test of the next gen car at Auto Club Speedway. The first cookie cutter track for the next gen car. It's 2 miles. This was going to be the big test. This is what everybody was watching. It'd probably be more critical in terms of like how the next gen car would be than the Daytona 500 was. I mean, you had a lot of people, and especially a lot of people paying attention to the racing, and I think it was a great success. I mean, you finally get to see drivers have like off time in the throttle. I mean, people were even using brakes, some people just letting off. You saw cars spinning out, which you haven't seen in practice. I mean, speaking of all, practice is back, thank God. Practice, qualifying, so good to see that back. I mean, but you see people spinning and wrecking in practice. You saw Kevin Harvick, Ross Chastain wreck. You saw people like William Byron, Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace. I think there were 9 drivers that spun in practice, which is not something you've seen in a long time. I mean, it shows how hard these cars are to handle. I mean, and the drivers asked for that. The fans asked for that. It's good that cars are hard to handle. I mean, it puts a lot more focus on the driver, and also less focus on the equipment. I mean, going into the race, we saw Eric Jones qualify on the outside pole. I mean, that's not something you expected, especially from Richard Petty Motorsports, who's been like I'm not going to say that word. They've been a pretty garbage team the past, like, however many years after switching to Chevy. Under Ford, they were decent. They got worse, and then they switched to Chevy, and that just went all downhill. Last year, they weren't that good either. But look, Eric Jones is a very talented driver. I mean, I think he's the best driver they've had in a while. Better than Almirola, better than Bubba Wallace in terms of talent. He's also had experience running up front when he was at Joe Gibbs Racing. He has experience being in the top 10, the top 5. He had 2 wins at JGR. So Eric Jones is a good driver. I mean, he's a former champion. I believe it was Truck Series champion. So, yeah. And you got to see Eric Jones lead for a while. You got to see the 43 out front at a non-plate track. I mean, that was huge. And I think that was like the first time we saw the 43 out front at a non-plate track since Bubba Wallace at Bristol in like 2018. So it's pretty big. A good thing for RPM. They had a top 5 run all day. So seeing that the not as powerhouse teams like Richard Petty Motorsports were able to be run up front, that was a huge focal point of the next gen car. It was supposed to like level out the playing field and make it more focused on the driver, which was good. I mean, you saw it. I mean, you saw guys like Tyler Reddick in RCR. I mean, last year, I mean, you saw Reddick up front for a decent amount. You saw him in like the top 5 and stuff, but you didn't see him like leading races as much. But early on at Auto Club, until he blew that tire, he was dominating the race. Like, he was like untouchable from like lap, what was it, around 40 to like lap 110 or something like that. he was untouchable. I mean, he swept the stages, but as we figured out from other times this year, sweeping stages is not a good omen for the rest of the race. You have Tyler Reddick blowing a tire, and Tyler Reddick's my third favorite driver. I like Tyler Reddick a lot. He's an insanely talented racer, funny guy. He's liked some of my posts too, so that might have something to do with it. He's reposted one of my posts onto his story. I got to meet him at Watkins Glen this past year. It's crazy actually how short he is. I got a picture with him, and my dad's like, "Oh my God, you look like you're taking him to his first day in first grade." But yeah, I love Tyler Reddick, man. I think he's going to be a future superstar. He's going to bring RCR back to like what it was, I wouldn't say 90s because he got Dale Earnhardt, or I'd say like 2000s with Kevin Harvick. He's gonna bring RCR back to that point. You've seen the progression that RCR has made with him behind the wheel. I mean, it's huge. He's a great driver. He's insanely talented. He's very mature for his age and his experience. So yeah, I like Tyler Reddick. It was heartbreaking to see him go down like that. Like when we saw him blow a tire, I'm like, okay, hopefully he can make it back to pit road, and then boom. Yeah, I mean, you have William Byron just slam into him, and at first I was like, oh my God, is William Byron blind? Like I was pissed off at Byron. But then I realized he got loose coming up the track. I mean, yeah, you can't really blame that on him. But yeah, it sucked to see Tyler Reddick's day end like that after having such a good run. But yeah, the rest of the race, I mean, you saw a lot of lead changes. I mean, hell, we saw Daniel Suarez go up front. There was a point where we thought Daniel Suarez was going to win the race. I mean, and just speaking of Daniel Suarez, I thought he might have had that race in the bag in those closing laps. But I don't know what he was doing when he went to the bottom, man. It was such a bad mistake. I mean, if he would have just ran that top and just ripped the top for like the rest of the race, he probably would have won. He could have gotten his first career win. I would have been ecstatic for him to get his first career win. I wanted to see him win so badly, but I don't know what he was doing running the bottom there. And Larson just flew by him after getting that run on the top. But look, I mean, Daniel Suarez, we've seen him not win in multiple years at JGR, at Stewart-Haas. I mean, it's decisions like this that make teams not want to keep you. I mean, I think he's staying at Trackhouse for a long time. I mean, the team was built around him. So you got Pitbull as an owner who obviously wants to keep Daniel Suarez in. I mean, they got that connection. They're both Hispanic, you know. The same thing with like Bubba Wallace and Michael Jordan. Jordan's the only black NASCAR owner. Wallace is the only black NASCAR driver. Pitbull's the only Hispanic NASCAR owner. I could be wrong. And Suarez is the only Hispanic NASCAR driver. So, I mean, I think they're going to stay for each other. I think Trackhouse is going to be Daniel Suarez's home for a long time. But, man, I really hope he wins a race. And he's just got to work on not making moves like that could lose him the race. So, yeah, and then we end up seeing another teammate conflict like we saw towards the end at Daytona with Austin Cindric and Ryan Blaney. We see Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, two of the Hendrick drivers who made the Final Four last year. And honestly, I think there is a bit of a rivalry there. I mean, Chase Elliott was the top dog at Hendrick, won the championship in 2020. All of a sudden, you have this new driver come in, Kyle Larson, who's been in average equipment before, but managed to win in Ganassi, win multiple races in Ganassi. He won 4 times in 2017. So we obviously know Kyle Larson's an insanely talented driver, and last year he proved that he's the most talented driver in NASCAR. And Kyle Larson pretty much just blows all of his teammates out of the water at Hendrick Motorsports. And I mean, so when you're Chase Elliott, I mean, it's just got to be like a psychological advantage, like, oh, I got to beat that guy, I got to beat that guy. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Chase Elliott's pissed. You heard him more pissed off than he's ever been before on the radio. You could argue whether he intentionally spun the car to try and screw Larson. I mean, you saw him turning left as the car was spinning out instead of turning right, which is what most people do to try to straighten the car out. But again, the toe link broke, and Hendrick had proof of that happening. So, yeah, I mean, you can't really argue much about that. But Kyle Larson wins again in 2021. I'm sorry. I'm so used to saying Kyle Larson wins in 2021, but it's 2022 now. Larson's back to his winning ways. Yeah, it's not like we didn't expect this to happen. Kyle Larson back to his winning ways and already locked into the playoffs in his quest to defend his title. All right, now moving on to Las Vegas. Las Vegas, pretty interesting race at Las Vegas. Another good showing for the next-gen car. A lot of very good racing. You had a lot of people not being able to pull away. Ross Chastain was the dominant car. I mean, I didn't think I'd be saying this at Las Vegas, Ross Chastain being the dominant car. But again, that just shows the strength of what the next-gen car is supposed to do. It's supposed to give lower-end teams the strength to be able to compete up front. And, I mean, we saw like it happen with Tyler Reddick at Auto Club, and we see Ross Chastain. I mean, those are two like RCR-based teams, not one of the big four, not Hendrick, not Stewart-Haas, not Gibbs, not Penske. Like, I'd say probably a second-tier team. I don't know if Trackhouse is second tier, second and a half tier maybe. I'd put them maybe third tier. I don't know, but yeah, you got to see them. Actually, they're the old Ganassi team, so yes, second and a half tier. All right, no, let's stop getting off topic. But yeah, Ross Chastain, we've seen him win at Xfinity at Las Vegas before. So yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see Ross Chastain winning a race. I really hoped he would win that race towards the end. But in the end, you have Joe Gibbs' teammates Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. You got Kyle Busch, who was in a car that was just going to be used for spare parts. It didn't have an engine in it. It didn't have a seat in it. A lot of the parts in there were just going to be used for just to be taken out and replaced any other parts that might have been just damaged from the main car. So just seeing that car being able to make its way from last to first and being able to lead at the end, that's insane. I mean, kudos to Ben Bayshore, Joe Gibbs Racing, for setting up that car, getting it right for Kyle Busch, being able to compete towards the end. I thought Truex was going to pass him towards the end for sure. I mean, Truex was a lot faster in the long runs. I thought he was going to pass him, but there was a bit of maybe a weakness we saw to the next-gen car that we've seen with the aero package from 2019, 2020, 2021, that Kyle Busch basically made it impossible for Truex to pass because of dirty air. I mean, the rear air diffuser is supposed to help with that, but I mean, it didn't look like it was helping a lot. I mean, Truex was still not able to pass Busch if he was in the same lane. I mean, even with other cars beforehand, it would have been a bit more difficult to pass in the same lane, but it didn't look very much different from the past package. So maybe a bit of a weak spot in the next gen car. But Kyle Busch started pulling away, maybe he was just saving his stuff because he knew Truex had a better long run car and he wanted to save his stuff for the long run. I don't know, but obviously you have that Eric Jones caution towards the end, which basically changes everything. I mean, you have Alex Bowman, who led early. He led it was I don't know, I believe maybe 10 laps earlier in the race, and won stage one. But Alex Bowman obviously had a fast car, top 5 car, if not one of the best cars all day. But his team messed up on pit road. It's an equipment interference. I believe they dropped a tire into the 17's box on pit road, and Bowman had made his way up from the back. He made his way up to third, which is good. I respect the hell out of Bowman for that. Being able to go from rear end of the lead lap to third. But if that caution does not come out, he has no chance of catching Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr., even more so passing them for the lead. And, I mean, obviously, after that comes out, you still got most people taking 4, then the Hendrick cars take 2. I think that was a very smart move by all the Hendrick cars to take 2. And people were saying, oh, why would all of them take 2? They're just going to be battling with each other. But thing is, you got 3 cars who took 2 tires. If you have 3 cars up front instead of 1 car up front, with 3 cars with 2 tires and the rest with 4 tires versus 1 driver with 2 tires and the rest with 4 tires, I mean, you're going to have Larson and I believe Byron was in third. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Byron. I think Elliott took 4. But you got them protecting the lead from guys like Kyle Busch and MTJ. So, and Ross Chastain, of course. But, yeah, honestly, I mean, I say, I was just in disbelief after. I'm like, how does this keep happening to Alex Bowman? It's incredible. I mean, I don't understand how one person could get so incredibly lucky. I mean, it's Las Vegas and all that, but just being lucky on a consistent basis like that, just the odds of it happening time after time after time. I mean, you had Richmond last year, you had Pocono last year. And then obviously, like, look, people saying, oh, you're being a Bowman hater, blah, 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 blah. Like, obviously, you can't deny the fact that luck has heavily influenced a lot of Alex Bowman's wins in NASCAR. I wouldn't necessarily say even luck, but just stuff that was not him. You could say that, like, Dover last year, he somewhat deserved that because, he held off Kyle Larson, but again, Hendrick cars were not really able to pass each other, so, I don't know, but he did hold him off and lead, like 90-something laps or something, but, Martinsville wrecked Denny Hamlin for it. You could argue that it wasn't purposely. I've talked about that in the podcast before. I think it was like episode 4 or something, episode 3. I can't remember. I've been doing this thing for a while. I have terrible short-term memory. But you obviously got Pocono where somehow Kyle Larson with no tires bad, tire wear that shouldn't have been enough to blow a tire, somehow blows a tire in the last corner of the last lap, which is incredible. And then you got Richmond last year. Bowman was 6 seconds or 10 seconds behind Denny Hamlin, and he had a fast car, but he was nowhere near Denny Hamlin. And because that caution come out late in the race, he goes and wins the race. And this is almost a carbon copy of what Richmond last year has. A very fast car, has the fastest car at the time, but has no shot of winning the race if it goes green and a caution comes out in the final laps, gets up front and wins. So, I don't know. Look, I like Alex Bowman as a person. I love him as a person. He's probably, I think, the guy with the most personality at Hendrick Motorsports. I like drivers with a personality. Alex Bowman he's pretty funny. He's a nice guy. He's a bit of a troll too, as you can see with his t-shirts. Look, it's kudos to him for making bank off of the criticism and making it into shirts and making it into merchandise. So, good for him. I think he has a good personality and all that. But, oh my god, his fan base makes it impossible. I've heard people say that, that Alex Bowman is, a top 3 driver in NASCAR. Are you serious? I get that he has the second most wins in the past, season and 3 races. But he's nowhere close to being a top 3 driver in NASCAR. You're getting ahead of yourself there, buddy. You see, even saying he's a top 5 driver or a top 10 driver. He was 14th last year in the standings in Hendrick Motorsports. And in regular standings. I don't know why I said Hendrick Motorsports. 14th last year in the regular standings in a Hendrick Motorsports car. So, saying Alex Bowman is a top 10 driver is a bit far-fetched. I like him as a person. People saying, oh, you hate Bowman, you hate Hendrick. Yes, I'm not exactly a big fan of Hendrick, but it's mainly due to the fan base. Chase Elliott, I'm a bit on him as a driver. I'm not exactly a big fan, but his fan base just makes me hate him. And then same thing with Bowman. I like him as a guy. I like him, but now when his fan base starts calling him a top 3 driver in NASCAR, and is acting like he's the best driver of all time, and he's better than and saying, oh, he's better than Denny Hamlin. He's not a hack. Denny, you're a hack. That's also part of the Denny Hamlin fans speaking out at me. But just saying that just makes the fan base sound idiotic, really. I don't really have much against Bowman. I like the guy, but Jesus, the fan base makes him intolerable. His fan base is starting to become, one of the worst in the sport. I'd put them right up there with the Logano and Kyle Busch fans, to be honest. Not as bad as the Chase fans, of course, but yeah, it is getting pretty annoying. But yeah, anyways, Alex Bowman somehow gets lucky again and wins. Not saying that it's no skill involved. Obviously, every win has a skill involved, but some wins are just heavily influenced by luck and would have never happened had a certain event not happened. Obviously, you gotta respect the skill part of it. You gotta respect the strategy of Greg Ives and Hendrick Motorsports putting on 2 tires and having Larson and Byron as protection for Bowman up front. Yeah, you gotta give them a what's it called? I don't know. Just respect them for doing that. I forgot the words off the tip of my tongue. Whatever. But there's some wins that are just heavily influenced by luck. You could say that some wins would not have happened had something lucky not happened. Bubba Wallace's win, you could talk all about, yes, there was obviously skill involved. He drove up to the front. They knew rain was coming. But if the race was not called, there was a high chance that he did not win this race. There's obviously a chance that he still wins it. But I think it was Wallace, he still had a chance at winning the race even if the rain didn't happen. If this caution did not happen, Alex Bowman has no shot at winning this race. I mean, let's see, like other ones, like Justin Haley. If NASCAR had not gone back on their word for the caution, like because of the lightning strike, Justin Haley would not have won that race, and like I think everybody knows that for a fact. And so I mean, you could talk about like certain things, but like being lucky, but it seems like just a lot of Alex Bowman's wins are heavily influenced by some supernatural event happening. Like it's insane. So, but yeah, I mean, he's locked into the playoffs. I made a prediction early in the year that he would not win any races, so that's depression for me. But look, honestly, on my posts here, let me just pull them up. Put them on the screen right now. I mean, my race predictions this year have been very on point. I mean, I had Logano winning the Clash. I was correct about that. I had Stenhouse winning the 500. I mean, he was leading. He was up front. Was he leading? I can't remember. But he was up front close to the end before being wrecked by Keselowski. He had a very good chance at winning that race. Larson, obviously, I was correct about. And Truex had Kyle Busch, not cock-blocked him with dirty air. He very well could have won that race. And, of course, without that caution, he also could have won that race. So, my race predictions, not that bad so far. But, my prediction about Bowman not winning, that's gone pretty awry. But, anyways, it's almost 41 minutes now. That's crazy. So, I told you I would be answering 3 random questions from my followers on Instagram, so let me just go check Instagram real quick, and I will be back with those questions. Alright, so the first question comes from Brian_.23. What is your favorite race of all time? That's a tough one. It's going to have to be from 2017 onward, since I only started getting back into NASCAR in 2017. It's probably the 2019 Daytona 500. I'd say. Obviously, my favorite driver, Denny Hamlin, winning it. You had several overtimes, a bunch of good crashes, a lot of good side-by-side racing as well. So you got that. I just really liked that race. I was really excited toward the end. I was hopping up. I was jumping up and down on my feet. It was exciting. Another one that I like is probably 2019 Talladega Fall race with Ryan Blaney beating Ryan Newman to the line by 0.007 seconds. We had 3 big crashes that race. We have a lot of good side-by-side racing, a lot of aggressive pushing and stuff, and pure excitement in the final laps. And you also have Ryan Blaney, who came back from spinning onto pit road early in the race, coming back to win it. So that was cool. All right, next question from Jimmy Johnson X48. Is Larson going to go back-to-back champs? Look, I think it's too early in the season right now to predict the champion, but, I mean, look, it's going to be hard to beat Kyle Larson. I'm pretty sure I have him in my preseason predictions as going back-to-back. I mean, he's quite obviously the most talented driver in NASCAR. He's with the best team in NASCAR. They were the best team last year. I'm not sure about this year. We'll have to see about that. But I think it's going to be very hard to beat Kyle Larson, and I do think that he's probably going to win a back-to-back championship for Hendrick Motorsports in that number 5 car. And last question as we reach 43 minutes in the podcast. Which JGR driver does Ty Gibbs replace? I feel like he'd be in the 11 after Hamlin goes driver-owner, from D-Rock Newell. This is a tough question. I mean, Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. are currently the 2 oldest drivers at JGR, and they are still well into their... I don't know about Truex, but Denny Hamlin is definitely in his prime with Chris Gabehart. I mean, 3 straight championship, 4 appearances. I mean, you got Truex as well. 2020 was a bit of an off year with James Small being in his first year, but 2019, 2021, 2 very good years with JGR, 2 championship, 4 appearances, I think it was 7 wins or 6. No, maybe it might have been. It was 7 wins in 2019, 4 wins in 2021. The thing is, I feel like Truex has been at it the longest. I feel like Truex is. I don't want to say he's losing his touch, but I just feel like Truex, he just doesn't have as much emotion anymore. I feel like, and he's getting more and more pissed off. I mean, you hear him on the radio. So I'd say Truex probably retires first. Ty Gibbs goes to replace Martin Truex. I do not think that Denny Hamlin is going to go to 2311 Racing to end his career. I think he's going to stay with Joe Gibbs till the very end. I mean, he's had a good relationship with them over the years. Obviously, with FedEx as well. FedEx has sponsored him every year. They're signed through 2023, so he's going to be with them next year for sure. So I wouldn't say for sure. I mean, FedEx is signed with them and with Denny Hamlin through 2023. So I'm pretty sure it's 2023, or maybe I might be thinking of Bubba Wallace's contract with 2311 Racing. But Ty Gibbs, if he does do very well in Xfinity this year, which I expect him to do, I expect him to be the champion, maybe him or Noah Gragson. But if he does move up next year, I'd say it's more likely he replaces Truex than Hamlin. But anyways, we're at 45 minutes now. It has been a long episode. I think one of the longest ones I've had. So I'm going to be signing off right now. This has been your boy, Dank NASCAR Memes. I hope you guys liked the Q&A part, the Ask Stemp. Let me know in the comments section of YouTube, or DM me on Instagram or on Twitter whether you think I should do it again. I think it's a good way to like interact with the fans, get more people involved in my podcast. So yeah, let me know if you want to do it again. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. It's been a long 45 minutes. I feel like I've been talking forever, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys soon.